Aviation safety depends on minimizing error in all facets of the system. While the role of human errors has received much emphasis, recently more attention has been directed towards reducing human error in maintenance and inspection. This is Human Errors in Maintenance.
Ooh, human errors in maintenance, eh? I'm Canadian today. So, aviation maintenance and inspection, as we all know, part of a complex organization where individuals perform varied tasks in an environment with time pressures, sparse feedback, and sometimes difficult ambient conditions. What does that mean to us in layman's terms? Do it faster, get it done now. I don't care if you don't have all the right stuff, make it work. And also it's raining outside. Bye. You know.
Have a great time, everybody.
Have a great time.
We hear this subject quite a lot, especially with human factors. Like, what are the things that cause aviation to fail? What causes airplanes to break? What causes incidents? And what causes the people to want to leave their jobs? In a nutshell, it is exactly this. It's the human error part, or the human factors part, I would say. And there's ditties all over the place as to what they are and how do we mitigate them? How do we, air quotes, safety net them? But when everything has a timeline and everything has a must-do attitude, a lot of those things go out the door pretty fast.
Yeah, everybody kind of leans away from the safety, quality, and security of doing their job per the manual, doing it the right way, and cut corners. And oftentimes those corners lead to incident. Just for example, right, the FAA reported, and this is back in the 90s, I think it is, but there was a Continental Express aircraft where the what was it? They forgot to replace the screws in, I think it was a stabilizer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And due to time constraints and whatever else, they look good. Yeah, they're supposed to be replaced at this interval, but cut corners, save money, all those things. And the leading edge separated in flight, and it caused 14 fatalities.
Jesus.
So just simply ignoring screws that they look good, right? They should be fine. And look what happened. So lots of negative repercussions for something so small as a screw, right?
Right. And that's like the biggest, most critical part of it all, right? And it also has the little things as well, like errors in maintenance, errors in inspection, errors in documentation that can, at minimum, like have delays, like say gate returns if you're in the commercial areas, having to divert a flight so you can have your passengers go to another plane or something like that. Something small and minor that can easily have been fixed if you just give it that little extra diligence, that little extra care, can lead to can have such profound effects from missing the flight, having to double back and do the maintenance again. I'm sure we've all had to do that before, or something as severe as a fatality crash.
God forbid. I hope none of us ever get involved in one of those investigations.
Oh, I can believe, man. Like, I can't remember the last time I've witnessed an NTSB inspection. They tore through our asses fucking hard, and you guys being the technician or the inspector or whoever it was that released that plane for flight, you're getting your whole livelihood questioned, like they're asking you shit like about your past, about what your mindset was and doing the whole job from start to finish, and you're having to recall all this however long ago the inspection was. So like, where were you when you did this? What happened here? What were your 12-step process and all kinds of shit? Like, fuck.
Oh, I know. Like, they make you feel like a criminal, even though, okay, what happened? This aircraft had such and such issue because of a failure in this system, and you're going, well, I didn't even touch that system. I worked on this part of the system, and that's true, right? And the two systems aren't even tied together, but because your name is in that logbook, you're now under investigation because, okay, you worked on Tuesday on the nav system, but on Wednesday, another vendor worked on the hydro system, which is where the failure was caused, but your name was in there within a 24-hour period, before or after, and now you're under investigation. And so they start going through your head, like you said, Six, and asking the 12-step process and everything else, and going, well, this and that and what the other, and you're like, I know those systems aren't tied together, but they make you feel, and you start questioning it. So then you pull open the manuals, right, and you're going, oh my God, I just got to verify that these two aren't tied together, even though you know they're not tied together. There's no possible way they're tied together, but they make you feel like it is, and they make you feel like, and they make you start second guessing all the choices and steps you made.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's how we felt. Like, did I really do that? And then you start trying to like rewind time to relive the situation, but your brain's already fucked up, so you can't tell if you really did it or not. If it's all made up or you're actually recollecting it how it was. Now, fortunately, there's a lot of advancements with hardware, with software, with parts and all this and that, where it can safety net a little bit of these problems, right? The fail-safe systems in certain compartments and certain aircraft parts and certain things, like say like a rat for a commercial airline. If the engine so happened to lose power for whatever instance, has this little propeller thing that can kind of give it just a wee bit to get it home safely. Improve hardware, better software stuff, better maintenance equipment. That's a flash. Right?
Better maintenance equipment. What do you mean? What do you mean the equipment from Vietnam isn't sufficient to work in 2021?
Right.
What are you saying to me, Six? You telling me to spend money? You telling me to spend money on the program? Nay, says I. Make it work.
Make it work, friend. I'm not your friend, pal. But
not your pal, guy.
But these little things, as mitigating as they are, they can't eliminate everything, because like all things fail-safes break. Or if they're not maintained properly, they break too. And it just compounds the problem. For instance, like putting nitrogen in an oxygen system. Weird.
Yeah, servicing, and for all those, I think we mentioned this before, but that's a very, very real thing that happened within the last month. A technician went and serviced the O2 system with nitrogen. Now, many of you are saying, well, those fittings are two different sizes, and even the threaded portions of the bottles where the gases are stored are different. How did they make that work? Oh, with a complex series of unions, elbows, fittings, and everything else, like a Frankenstein to make it work. Somebody went and worked way harder at making the gauges fit to the wrong bottles as it would have been just to go service it. It's baffling to me, right? How that happens. I've serviced numerous nitrogen required parts of an aircraft, and I've serviced O2 many times over, and it's unfathomable to think that somebody could do that, and to think it's okay. And then when it was discovered and approached, their response was, again, air is air. Is it? Is it now?
Is it now?
Well, go take a deep breath of that nitrogen. Go inhale that shit. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense. To do that. And then fast forward to just a few days ago, this same individual went to service engine oil, but there's an engine break-in oil, and then there's the standard, which is not for flight, and then there's the standard, whatever manufacturer calls out, engine oil for normal operations, flight, whatever. And again, this person was caught. Hey, where are you going with the engine break-in oil? We got nothing. We're working on that right now. Oh, I'm just going to go service this aircraft. Why with the engine break-in oil? Well, it just needs oil. It's low. You can't mix the two, and this isn't for flight. It even says it right here on the bottle and on the MSDS sheet. Yeah, but it'll be fine.
What?
No, it won't be fine. Like, but
What?
the sad part is that this person's still employed. They've locked them to a desk and said, okay, you're not going to do maintenance for a while because you're under investigation, air quotes, and we're going to just have you do computer work. That's not good enough, though. The person's still employed. Like, at this point, numerous lives could have been lost had this person been working by themselves and no one else in the area to question what they were doing.
Yeah, no shit.
Imagine if they had came in on an overtime day or whatever else and they're by themselves. Who would have known? Who would have known that happened? Because the same individual wasn't filling out the logbooks either with the work they were doing. So there's no way to track it. Like, how does that? It's insanity to me that employer would continue to retain that individual. I mean, it's such a massive liability.
Yeah,
I think most people, if it was me running that shop, I'd be going, you, this is not acceptable. And then reporting, taking their A&P number down and then reporting it to the FAA. Yeah. Like, it's you're a hazard to the industry and society at this point.
No kidding.
Well, because think about it, right? Let's say that they'd serviced. Let's go back to the nitrogen and the O2, and the pilots go up and they're at altitude, and they're going to take a hit of O2 and nothing. What the hell is this? This is what this isn't right. And then they pass out, and then that plane crashes into downtown wherever, taking out not only the air crew but numerous other civilians with it. Like, it compounds from there. What the hell is happening? Why would you continue to employ this person? What value added are they at this point? They've proven themselves twice incapable of following maintenance manual direction and even common sense, right? I hate to use the common sense thing because if it feels common, everyone would have it. But hell, the bottle stated O2 and nitrogen, and then for the oil scenario, the bottle stated for ground runs only, not for flight. I don't know what else you got it. Like, what else can I do? Yeah.
I've had engineering controls. I have administrative controls. The only thing that's literally stopping you is the fact that you don't give a fuck and you did it anyway. We had a listener, matter of fact, he sent a message to us after listening to our episode about the whole nitrogen, oxygen thing. And he says he's had numerous occasions from a shift turnover where individuals were putting Skydrol in the engine oil system. Fucking what? Skydrol. Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I'm like, how? How?
Yeah, how? I mean, what? Why? What was this? I mean, the Skydrol, first of all, won't mix with the engine oil, but two, it's going to eat every seal in that oil system out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to deteriorate them, and they're going to have piss oil everywhere, and then loss of oil, and then motor seizure, and then fire, and then,
certain and impending death. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
so I didn't see that. Where did they say where that was at?
I don't know. I just remember the listener sent that message, and like, as soon as he said Skydrol oil system, like my brain just, like, you ever had something so traumatic happen and you just blank everything after that?
Yeah, like a computer when it gets the blue screen of death. Like, that's what happened to me just now. I couldn't compute.
Yeah, literally, that was me. Like, holy shit. Okay.
Skydrol in the oil system.
Okay, so for reference,
and it's happened multiple times.
Yeah, and that's what he said. I'm like, how? Like, please tell me they got fired. At least give me that. Like, these guys are never working.
Better about myself.
Yeah. So for those who've never heard of either of these terms, like Skydrol and whatever, imagine putting gasoline in your engine oil tank. That's more or less what the hell you're doing. So it's out of control. It blows my mind that someone even thought that was a smart thing to do. And again, going back to what we were saying about these technological advances, air quote technological advances, is we get complacent about that these things will catch our fuck ups. But again, these fail safes are ran by other humans who who air quote know what the fuck they're doing, and we just got to take that as is. I'm like, so the role in any human error in any accident, incident, or job is so fundamental that the slightest fuck you, let's call it that, can lead to such big shit.
It's just like they don't care. Well, my task is to do this, and I have to service a fluid to this or a gas to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I did my job. What else do you want? I mean, why are you mad? I did what you told me to. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't do it the right way. And it's like they just don't. I don't know. It's just complete negligence is what it is. And then you hear, I never really understood why, well, okay, I guess I understood, but people when they say, oh, I'm afraid to fly. Oh yeah, but it's safer than driving your car, like the safety measures and standards put into place to keep an aircraft flight worthy are way higher than that of an automobile. But then you hear stories like these and you're going, I'm a little concerned about getting on that next flight,
Right. Yeah. Now, again, like this is like far right scenarios, far right, far left scenarios. Like these, they happen,
but real nonetheless.
Yeah. And, a lot of these contribute to like, again, going back to the human side of things, like sometimes you got individuals who just straight negligent that think they know better. And then you have some individuals where they're just pressured into making these decisions, or they're pressured into accepting these decisions. And they just, their concerns, let's call it concerns, just get washed over because we need to make this flight happen. We need to make this revenue happen. We need to make this operation happen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you didn't know better, you would just take it as is, right? It's part of the norm. So no one's there to tell you different. Like,
right. No, but you got to be willing to question at some point you got to be willing to raise your hand, throw the flag and say, hey, you said this, but I have some concerns,
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid to voice those concerns. So we've mentioned human error a couple of times in here, but I guess we really haven't defined what it is. So human error has been characterized as any member of a set of human actions that exceeds some limit of acceptability. Any human action or inaction that exceeds the tolerances defined by the system with which the human interacts. The failure to achieve an intended outcome beyond the influence of random occurrence. A necessary outcome to allow humans to explore and understand systems and derivative of operators' social experience of responsibility and values.
Ooh, I think that's the big one right there. The users or the operators' social experience of responsibility and value. Holy shit.
Yeah. That kind of puts everything into perspective, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, and think about, if I think back to at least many of the incidents that I've seen that were involved human error, it was that one alone.
Mm-hmm.
That suggests, let me go back to it. The derivative of operators' social experience of responsibility and values, meaning that they just didn't care. Like, why'd you do that? I don't know. Like, you just get the shoulder shrug and I don't know. And you're like, but why would you put Skydro on the oil? I don't know. I guess I wasn't thinking clearly. Well, what were you working to? Like, you didn't have to think. All you had to do was read.
Right?
Read the manual and it would have told you. Like, what in your mind said, this is good for this? I don't know. But that's been more often than not. People are just complacent, negligent, don't care, doesn't directly affect them. They just wanted to get their job done so they can go home.
Yeah. And again, it's either that or, like the other humans like above them, they're pressuring down because I want to look good. I want to do this. I want to assert that I am right. There was this one cartoon that one of the good ladies from TikTok and Mimosas posted, and it was something about a lion and a donkey. It was a donkey, a lion, and a tiger. And at the end of it all, the lion says to the tiger, like, some people are just more concerned about the victory of being right than actually being right. And I feel like this applies so hard into the aviation realm, especially because you could be completely in the right book. Like the books tell you you're right. Your manuals tell you you're right. Your specifications, your drawings, your education and your morals tell you that this is right. And then someone else will fight tooth and nail against everything you're saying, even though it's proven, just because they want to be the last one to laugh. Like,
yeah, I have to have the last word. I know I'm wrong, but I will fight you to make you believe that I'm right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So how do we respond to human error, right?
Mm-hmm.
Per the FAA, the single most important contribution of human error investigation methods, both the HRA and human error classifications, is to emphasize that the goal of the investigation is not to attribute blame, but rather errors that are traced beyond the operators who committed it to identify predisposing characteristics of the environment and task. So what does that mean, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, yeah, you serviced the nitrogen with the O2 with nitrogen. Okay, you were wrong. But the investigation shouldn't just end at, okay, we found because this person did that. That investigation over. No. Why did they do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, mm-hmm. Let's dig deeper. Okay, did the manuals, were the bottles not properly labeled? Were gauges out of calibration? Was training inadequate? It'll go all the way back for that individual. It'll go all the way back to who bought off your hours, your certificate, your recs or whatever to allow you to get this license. Yeah. Who approved you? It will go all the way back to that instructor and say, oh, okay, let's look at him now. Oh man, under this person, he's bought off 15 people, and of those 15, 6 have been under investigation for error. Wow, what is this guy doing wrong? You know, like that's how far the investigations go, or to the point of, okay, they ran out there and they did this, and that, and they skipped changing the screws in the leading edge because it was a snowstorm and the flight had 2 hours until it needed to take off before the snowstorm got worse to get this important individual off the ground to go to their next meeting or whatever else. You know what I mean? So we cut corners. Okay, well, then the investigation proves that people are being dictated to do unsafe actions for the sake of saving time and money, right? Those kind of things.
Yeah. Or, you know, it could be one of those like unknown circumstances. Like, they didn't know it was wrong because it was behind like 50 different parts, which they would have to have removed in order to know that it was wrong. Like there was no indication whatsoever that it was wrong. Nothing would have prompted them to think otherwise. It just so happened to end that way. And that's kind of like the gray area of things, right? Because you don't know. And sometimes like you don't have much time to make that assessment, right? Like if you're saying like this plane needs to turn around and fly again in the next 30 minutes, you're not going to do an in-depth inspection in 30 minutes and finish it off and button it up and sign it off good and all this other stuff. So you're going to do whatever local procedure you guys have for a turnaround or a through flight. Just try to hit the wickets of what is an obvious sign of a defect and then move on. And then, but you know, hindsight, let's say something bad happen after that through flight, they're going to start saying, why didn't you look at this? Why didn't you look at that? And then you're sitting there like, in what time zone could I have done this in the manner it would have taken to have this thing fly, right? And
yeah, you're wanting me to do a complete airframe engine, annual inspection in the time the aircraft stops at the gate to the time it takes off 30 minutes later. Like impossible and implausible.
Yeah. And then you'll have some individuals, right? They'll say, well, you should have just delayed that flight because you would have, you could have done your inspection better. True. But prior to that, let's assume this hypothetical incident. Prior to that incident, there was no indication that I would have needed to. It just said, hey, plane's coming in, needs a through flight, and off it goes. And then so here's your checklist of whatever you have to do for a between flight inspection.
Yeah, through flight, yeah.
It's like maybe like 15, 20 minutes worth of an inspection, not including the write-ups. And you did you did your due diligence. You check mark all the bare minimums per the checklist, because that's what everybody says. Like, if you just do the bare minimums on the manual, you can't go wrong. Until there's an incident, and then they start saying, like, why didn't you look at this? Your experience should have told you that, etc., etc., etc. I'm like, but according to whatever the manual said, I'm absolutely right. So there's that side of the human factors part. But there's a ditty for every industry as to what sort of hotspots, I guess you could call it, for human factors, like, say, distraction, lack of knowledge, which is we've been tapping like quite a bit in the last 5 minutes. Lack of assertiveness, the norm. you know, we can go on just that alone. But all these they add up when it comes to something as fast paced as an aviation realm, or an aviation industry, I should say.
Right. So reading through some more of this document here. There's a section called Aviation Maintenance Tasks and Environments. Aviation maintenance and inspection tasks occur within the larger context of organizational and physical environmental factors. A system model of aviation maintenance and inspection defines 4 interacting components in this system: operators, equipment, documentation, and task, and suggests that these components interact over time as well as within both physical and social or organizational environments. So kind of that kind of defines what we've been talking about, right? It's not just somebody's negligence and other things. There's all these outside factors, and it mentioned their organizational, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had many conversations both on this podcast and offline between Six and I, but so many times from the company level, things are directed due to money, right? Everything is driven by money. And I know what a lot of people are saying, well, it shouldn't be. The quality, the safety aspects of aviation should not be affected at all by schedules and by time frames and everything else. But it is, because an aircraft doesn't make money. A company doesn't make money when the aircraft's sitting on the ground. It just doesn't. I don't care what you're talking about. It could be even a flight school, right? Where it's training up and coming pilots. Well, those aircraft aren't making money at those flight schools while that aircraft's parked on the ramp. It's just not happening because nobody's renting it. Nobody's paying fuel to go into it. Nobody's doing these things. Look at the airliners, right? If those aircraft are just sitting on the back 40 at the local airfield, they're just gigantic paperweights. Nobody's buying tickets to ride on them. Nobody's putting fuel in them. Nobody's putting snacks and drinks and all these other things. Nobody's paying pilots. Like, the aircraft doesn't make money when it's sitting on the ground. And so I think a lot of root cause investigation could come back and say, okay, well, yeah, we skipped a few steps in order to shave 10 days off of this inspection in order to get that aircraft back into the fleet and back in the air.
Yep.
And with that, right, I see that even now. I'm involved even with some of those decision makings now, right? Mm-hmm. I myself am guilty of not following processes and procedures to the T due to mission requirements, right? And so is that wrong? You bet your ass it's wrong. But you also have to think about if that aircraft's not making money, the company's not making money, therefore, i.e., I don't get paid. Mm-hmm. You have to do an on-the-spot risk assessment within your head as to, okay, should I down the aircraft for this item? Okay, if I do that, we risk there's the potential that we could lose the mission. Okay, mm-hmm. Well, what am I going to get chewed out less for? Because I opted to overlook, because I opted not to impound for this one specific small piece where, from my perspective, it would have never made its way inside the inlet or exhaust of the aircraft or into any area of the aircraft that would have caused damage, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with that, also, okay, well, let's just say that component made it into the inlet. What are the chances that this small plastic piece would thaw out the motor and cause catastrophic failure? Next to none. I watched whole birds go through these motors, and it didn't even hiccup. There was no indication, nothing that a bird was ingested until the post-flight inspection. Like, holy shit, there's a bunch of blood and guts all over this thing, right? So okay. On the other end, okay, let's say I choose to, because the book says, and the right thing to do is to follow process procedure. Okay, well, we missed the mission. Okay, well, that was a big revenue flight. We could have made a lot of money. The company could have made a lot of money if that flight had happened, but it didn't happen. So now the customer's very upset because they spent a lot of money for no reward.
Yeah.
And so now there's negative repercussions, and now that customer could say, okay, I'm going to take my business elsewhere because it's obvious that you guys aren't capable of meeting our needs. And so it just rolls downhill from there. So you have to take those scenarios and to sort of do an on the spot risk assessment and determine what's acceptable and what's not. And now I'm not telling any of our listeners and any aviation maintenance specialist out there who's certified and everything else to look the other way on certain things just so the mission can get off. I am not saying that at all. You just have to weigh out the pros and cons and determine the severity of the situation. Okay, we got let's just say a static wick that's a little worn out. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, you have to have have to have the static wicks. It should be all fully functional prior to flight, but check the MEL list. Are we allowed to fly with one or two, missing or not fully 100% serviceable, or is it a hard downing item, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the consequence if I don't replace that? Oh, what if we get hit by lightning, this and that and the other, and then it fries electronics and static wicks couldn't dissipate the electricity properly? I don't know. There's a lot of factors that go into it, right? And part of that human factor is the decision-making side of it. So I just wanted to bring that to light so everyone knows that it's sometimes not so cut and dry when we think it should be.
Right. That brings up a very good point. Like some systems, especially like the organization systems, there's a lot of convoluted steps. Let's call it that in some areas, some more than others, but like, there's so many steps that you have to go through, and there's a lot of people touching these that need their pass go mark or pass go stamp for you to move on to the next step, right? So it gets real easy to overlook certain things, especially when there's so many steps and it's very easy to overlook if something hasn't been done or not. Like example, like say a seat, for instance, has like 14 or so locking mechanisms on it. If one out of the 14 wasn't locked all the way, would you miss it? Chances are yes. Yeah. Or another example is, I want to say this was in the 90s again, where like an accident with a faulty maintenance action, they didn't see the result of that faulty problem until like 18 months later. Right. So like,
yeah,
it's one of those issues where like it just builds over time and you never would have known it was there until it actually happens. And then you have to trace back to when it actually did occur. And you find out, oh, by the way, it was 18 months ago. So like it's real easy to miss certain of these steps. And if you haven't had the on the spot risk assessment to see like, okay, what's the issue or what's the likelihood of this becoming a problem, then everyone just kind of glosses it over, and then they don't document it. They don't do some kind of way to highlight that, hey, this has happened. It's fine, but just letting you know it happened. that kind of goes into the MEL list you just mentioned, or some organizations call it what's it called, the delayed actions list or delayed maintenance actions list. Like it's there, it's bad, but it's not terrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because as we know, most aircraft, in fact, most aircraft are redundancy, right? They have redundant systems just for that. So if something fails in flight, it's not catastrophic, not like your car where like, oh, I guess I'm just going to pull over to the side of the road and call AAA. This one's, I'm going to full speed it to the ground and call the FAA, it's just what's going to happen. But we keep, we've talked about and we've brought up some instances, and they were from the 90s, right? The fortunate side for all of us who fly, who work on these things, we all have integrity. Majority of us have integrity, and we care about what we do. And we care about the quality of work we do, and especially when we're signing our name to the work we're doing. Right? When somebody looks in the logbook, I want them to see my name and go, "Oh, I know that was done right." They just by my name, right? I've built that reputation of doing quality work.
Yep.
So the good side of that is because there's an abundance of like-minded people throughout the world, aircraft are pretty safe to fly on. And that's why it's so few and far between, thank God, between incidents, in aviation caused by maintenance.
Right.
But here's an interesting part of this article as well. Its effects of maintenance errors on aircraft equipment. And it says, several studies have identified the most common immediate effects of human error in aviation maintenance. A major airline shows the distribution of 122 maintenance errors over a period of 3 years to be omissions at 56%, incorrect installations 30%, wrong parts at 8%, and then other at 6%. I'm kind of curious what the other is, but the a 3-year study by the Civilian Aviation Authority, CAA, found that 8 most common maintenance errors to be incorrect installation of components, the fitting of wrong parts, electrical wiring discrepancies, including cross connections, loose objects, tools, etc., FOD, essentially, left in the aircraft, inadequate lubrication, cowlings, so I guess cowlings maybe not being fully secured, access panels and fairings. Oh yeah, that's what it says. Cowlings, access fairings, and panels not secured. Fuel caps and refuel panels not secured, and landing gear ground lock pins not removed before departure.
Ooh,
interesting.
Now, I've seen ones where like that where the ground lock pins were not installed and it was on the ground. So they went to go do a gear swing and the whole freaking aircraft just crashed on its belly. That was a fun time.
Yeah. I've seen similar things like that too. I saw one where they forgot to take out the one of the Cessna, I think it's a Citation Sovereign. There's a pin in the nose that goes in the nose gear.
Yep.
That'll prevent you from steering the aircraft with a tiller wheel up in the cockpit. So you don't use the rudder pedals on that. You use what's called a tiller wheel to steer it while on the ground and taxiing around. And so I've seen where somebody taxied into the grass area. No real significant damage. Just got a tug and pushed it back onto the tarmac. But they forgot to take out that pin out of the nose gear. So when they went to taxi and went to turn, they were getting no turn, and they just kind of floated to wherever the nose gear was pointed, which was straight ahead. But
oh my god!
Thankfully, there was no other aircraft in front of them. You know what I mean? Now, why they didn't hit the brakes and stop, I don't know. I guess panic ensued, and they couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
But I thought that's one of the instances I saw of a gear pin situation.
Yeah. I'd like to talk a little bit about that when you mentioned about the top percentage of errors, which is omissions. I think you said, 56%?
Yep.
So 56% of omissions. What that tells me is they see the problem and they don't write it up. Or they see the problem, they write it up, and then they downgrade it because they didn't feel it was that big of an issue.
And it wasn't that severe to them.
So, I mean, this kind of goes into like that whole risk assessment thing. Like, do we really need to do this? Or should we have this as a downing condition? And I've seen instances of both. Like, they would write up a test flight as a downing condition. Like, but then how is it gonna fly if we have to do a test flight? That makes no fucking sense. Or vice versa, where they see like an oil filter clog indicator, it pops, and instead of cleaning it because we don't have enough filters or whatever the case may be, we just reset the clog filter indicator and just let it keep riding, and just ride it until either the filter shits itself or the oil is so dirty that it overpressurizes itself and bursts the freaking filter.
Holy shit. Well, to tie in with that then, right? Okay, so in-flight engine shutdowns on Boeing 747s in 1991 were due to the following human errors in order of occurrence frequency. And this is Pratt and Whitney put this information out there. All right, so in order of frequency, engine shutdowns in flight in Boeing 747s in 1991. Boy, 1991 was a bad year to ride in one of those things, huh?
No shit.
So missing or incorrect parts, incorrect installation of parts, or use of worn, deteriorated parts, which is kind of what you were talking about. Like, oh, we don't have these filters, so let's just blow them out with some air and some alcohol and move on with our lives.
Let it ride.
Yep. Careless installation of O-rings. I have seen this on numerous engines, especially in piston engines. People rolling push rod tube O-rings, and it just rolled a little bit, and those things will dump oil like it's going out of style. And then we had one that was so severe that it locked up the crankshaft, right?
Oh.
And then it snapped the connecting rods to the pistons and punched holes through the top of the engine block. I mean, a hole like you could fit like a baseball through the top of the engine block, because it snapped the tie rods and punched them straight through the top of the engine case. It was crazy. We were able to save it though. They dead sticked it back into the airfield.
Hey, kudos to them on that one. But still, holy shit.
Next is B nuts not safety wired.
Oh my god.
Nuts tightened but not torqued or over torqued.
Over torqued.
Seals, yeah, over torqued. Yeah, so maybe they must have gave it a little too much gluten tight, and then maybe either crack the line, which I've seen in a recent situation too, or they creased the line, putting a stress part on it, and then over time that crease in the pipe, work hardened and gave way.
Mm-hmm.
Seals over torqued, not loosening both ends of connecting tube replacement tube assembly without first breaking connections between matching parts.
Ooh.
Interesting. Not tightening or replacing oil tank caps. I have seen that on more than one occasion too. As being, and it, like, man, on some of those Pratt and Whitney motors, if you don't put the cap on right. So we always train that you put the cap on to where the tab pushes down like aft.
Right.
So it's with the flow of air. So if that service panel comes off and the wind catches that cap, it won't lift the latch and pop it off. Just another way to minimize it.
Right.
But if those caps come off, it almost siphons oil out of the service port. Like the airflow over it, it's crazy. I didn't think that could happen, but it siphons the oil from the top, and thereby you losing all your oil. Not cleaning or tightening cannon plugs. Yeah, I've seen issues come up with that too. You just pull it off and hit it with some. How many times have you done that? Pulled a cannon. Well, we're having this electric connector. Oh, well, see something here real quick. First thing you do is pull the cannon plug off, hit it with some contact cleaner and reapply it, and run the ops check and see what happens.
Right.
Oh my God, I can't believe this is one of the things that we were tying in from one of our listeners. Well, another one's dropping foreign objects into engines, but allowing water in fuel, allowing Skydraw and oil system.
Oh my God!
Wow, that was an issue in 1991.
There you go,
Holy
man.
Holy shit! How is that happening?
Listener, if you're listening, see that? It's on. You're famous. It's on the article. Oh my God!
That is crazy.
So going a little bit about the over torquing nuts thing. I think I mentioned this in one of our first ever episodes. So helicopters have this link that ties the transmission to the rest of the aircraft. It's called a lift link. And this is basically like your probably one of the most essential components in the entire aircraft. So somehow along the line, someone over torqued the castellated nut on this lift link, and this aircraft was doing like a 2-hour flight from San Diego to up by San Bernardino County, and the castellated nut was so tight that it wore through the lift link as it's bouncing up and down, and it cracked from the transmission part. So the transmission is basically not connected to the aircraft at this point, and the only thing that's holding it in to keep it from flying completely out of the aircraft was the access cowlings just above it. That's the only thing that was keeping that transmission from just flying separate of the aircraft, and that's what was keeping the aircraft in the air. Holy shit. Holy shit. I could imagine like being the air crew in that plane, and you're just flying along, thinking everything is gravy, and you hear this loud pop, and then you just sink. It's probably like the worst sinking feeling you could probably ever receive in your life. The worst roller coaster feeling you could ever receive in your life. And just, I can imagine. Like, I would never fly again at that point. I mean, if I felt that, but.
Well, I mean, I think about like when you're riding on a roller coaster or even in a car and you go over a bump and your stomach drops all of a sudden because of a sudden dip.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that, but from 15,000 feet.
Yeah.
Or whatever in a helo. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Ooh.
That's funny.
God. And you know, our former boss, he when he was in the Marines, he was in a helo crash, and I can't remember what the failure was, but they fell. I can't remember how many thousands of feet they fell out of the sky into the desert, but he said they hit the ground so hard his teeth smashed together and shattered his teeth, which is why he had fake teeth on top and bottom. Remember that?
Yeah.
He was telling us about that one day, and I was just like, oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
He survived, but imagine hitting the ground so hard that your teeth smash together to the point where they crack and shatter. I couldn't imagine that. That had to be some of the worst pain ever.
No kidding. But I think at that point, you just be happy you walked away, like, I mean, if you did
at that
walk
point,
away,
the adrenaline's probably hitting and you're going, I can't believe I'm still alive.
Right. Wow.
Wow.
But yeah, going back to the Skydro and the oil system, God bless. And this must be a very common trend. And I don't.
Why is it a common trend? That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I'm finding that very hard to fathom or to stomach because they're not even like the same can.
No, they're very different looking cans. Now they do have quart-sized Skydro cans.
Mm-hmm.
But still, one is purple and white and says Skydro, and one is green and white and says BP, or blue and white and says Mobile, or whatever else is out there.
Right.
What?
Yeah, I can't even. My brain is not processing this. Oh my God.
Wow.
And this is stuff that's been published.
Let's see here.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it's from 1991. Yeah, I mean that was one of the main causes of engine failure in flight in 1991. So back in 1991,
mm-hmm.
That was what, 30 years ago?
Fuck.
91, 01, 11. Yeah, 30 years ago. 30 years ago, this was a problem.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, I'm mind blown about this. Jesus. But like we hear all this stuff a lot, right? Like especially in safety briefs and dirty dozen briefs and all kinds of stuff where it says, hey, your job and your decisions matter. And then you'll get those individuals who just like feel like they've seen it all and they've survived it all. I call that like survivorship bias, where like they feel that just because they lived through it, that they have some sort of immortality, that they know where all the problems exist, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, a little bit does. I don't know though. I kind of back to like, would I even fly again?
Yeah. I mean, I mean, the good part is like this happened like 30 some years ago. And for a lot of these accidents or incidents to happen 30 years later, it's very, very few and far between. I mean, you still hear about them, but like, I mean, one incident out of, I don't know, 500 flights, that's pretty decent if you ask me. Versus like say here in California, you turn on the morning news, you will hear at least 5 accidents on the I-10 freeway at least 5 times a day.
Imagine if those are the same numbers for aircraft. Nobody'd fly. Aviation wouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, like no, never again. But you hear all these accidents just in California alone. I can imagine what other states are like, and people still drive cars.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy to me.
Yeah, and the crazy part is like some of these failures they break through engineered safety features. You know what I mean? And they break through engineered features. They break through administrative safety features. It almost boils down to like, they choose to be ignorant, or somebody who's telling them what to do chooses to be ignorant. And I'm just like it says what it says. I mean, unless like the risk assessment is so minuscule that the chances of failure is like 1 in a couple thousand, then maybe. But other than that, like if it's a blatant failure and you know and everything in the world says this is bad, to include the MEL, to include the MESUM, or whatever matrix that tells you that we cannot fly with this, and you still ignore it, or you do some like out of sequence fix and an inspection, it's probably a good shady time, a good indicator that you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Now, it says there's 2. Let's see here. There are 2. Let's see. There are 2 fundamental methods for detecting errors in aviation. All right. The first detects human errors retroactively and is based on error reporting responses to system-defined performance deviations. Second, the second reporting system is a more conventional sense, but those reports residing within airline companies and more formal regulatory reporting systems.
So in other words, like don't be the one don't be the lesson, and then if you see something, say something. You know?
Yeah, and learn from history, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like that's more or less like learn from other people's mistakes because you may not be alive to make them again. And then if you see a problem, at least say something. At the very least, say something. I remember,
like I said in the beginning, don't be afraid to raise your hand.
Yeah, don't be the senior person with a secret. That's what it boils down to. If that makes any sort of sense to anyone out there, like if you see a problem, don't be the one to keep it in. Like say something. And if someone overrules you and say this is fine, this is great, this is within some kind of waiver authority or some shit, then hey, at least you said something. But when something,
but then you also know you're also covered by the documentation in that point.
Right.
If it isn't a waiver system,
right?
Hell, you might not have known a waiver system existed till you asked the question.
Exactly.
That happened to me once. I was like, oh yeah, we got a whole book of waivers. What? And sure enough, it was a binder full of waivers.
I remember this. I remember something similar like that in one of our previous jobs, like a whole like website full of what the hell did they call it? We'll just call it waivers. But there was like a whole thing like, when the fuck did this exist? Because here we are just pegging the same old shit. And you guys just like blow it off like I'm just being a fucking idiot.
Yeah, and sure enough, it's known about. But yeah, that's the case. So these reports, like we said, the detection systems are only as good as those incidents that are reported. So see something, say something. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. You might learn that there are waivers that exist or whatever else, but you might have also pointed out a problem that has been going on for a while, but nobody else said anything. And next thing you know, now there's all these engineering memorandums or directives or TCTOs or service bulletins coming out saying, "Oh, hold on, we got a problem throughout fleet wide." Saving thousands of lives. Like you got to make sure you ask the question.
Yeah, at least, and at the very least, like if you see a legitimate issue or legitimate problem, don't be afraid to assert yourself that it's wrong. Especially, well, of course, do the research first that you know it's wrong, that there's no waiver, that there's no nothing, it's no write up, there's no there's no form of traceability that says it's okay, and this is the first time it's being discovered. Don't be the one to not assert that, hey, this is a problem, because when say let's get dark here a little bit. Let's say this does turn into an incident or an accident where lives are lost, and the investigation authorities come in to look. They're gonna point their fingers at you, like, why didn't you do anything to stop it, or why didn't you do anything to push the issue to the people who needed to know? And if you say like, well, I told them about it, like, but what else did you do? It just turns into a he said, she said, and then you're the scapegoat all of a sudden.
Yeah, what's that old saying? Ignorance isn't doesn't absolve you from the law, or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, but yeah, you can't just, if they come in like, oh well, I saw it, but I didn't know there was anything wrong with it. That's not a valid excuse.
Yeah,
in the FAA's eyes.
Or what's it like? Everyone told, or this is how we've always done it. Oh my god.
Yeah. So you've always been wrong. Awesome.
Fantastic. So we're shutting down your entire operation here. None of you will ever work in aviation again. And
may God have mercy on your souls. All right.
Like, where'd you know points? A simple go fuck yourself would have been great.
Dumber for having listened to your incoherent ramblings.
Oh shit.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Final thoughts there, Six?
Oh, okay. My final thoughts. Well, like, we're all human and we all make mistakes. The problem is you got to be able to acknowledge that you made them, and hopefully not have it so bad where you'll never make them again, one way or another. If you see a problem, don't keep it to yourself. Say something, be assertive about it. Obviously, do some research before you say something about it, because nothing turns someone off more than just addressing a problem and not having any sort of facts to back it up and ways to fix it. You'll turn people off like it's cool in that aspect, and just realize
that is one of the biggest things. That's how I am. If I bring something up and you're like, I don't know, just do it that way. Can you give me the reason why we're supposed to do it that way, other than just because you said so? Like, I need something more than, because when the FAA comes and investigates me, I'm like, well, he said, and you're going to go, I didn't tell you shit. Prove it.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm one of those, like, okay, I'll comply, but I need something, a reason.
Yeah. Give
me something solid that I can sink my teeth into and use to my defense if I had to.
Mm-hmm. And because that's going to have to go in your corrective action too, whenever you do sign it off. Like, signed off as complete because my boss told me to. That will never fucking fly.
Yeah, never, ever, ever, ever.
Yeah. Part 145 says I'm good to go. So, thumbs up. Never. Fucking never.
Well, and two, right? One of my favorite things to say is when somebody's like, "Well, just go ahead and do this. Don't worry about. You can just skip that part of the inspection. It's pointless anyways." Blah blah blah. Okay, great. Who's signing this job off then? And then bosses turn around and look at you. Well, you are. Well, I'm certainly not. You're asking me to skip something that's clearly outlined in the manual for this inspection. I am. So if you want it skipped, that's great. Who's signing off the inspection though?
Yeah.
Nobody? Oh, so and every time it always comes back to, so did you do the complete inspection? Sure did. Yep. Right? You just don't take it blindly.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason they do that is because they've gotten away with that in the past, right? And they usually get it with new people when they're afraid, they don't want to upset their boss. You know, they're trying to make a good name for themselves. So they're just a yes man or a yes woman. They're like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll do that. Yeah, not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Until they get some old salty, crotchety SOB like you and I, and they're like, what now? No, that's not happening today. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Final thoughts for you, friend?
Well, I think we've already touched on them. See something, say something. Might be saving somebody's life, and I'll just leave it at that.
We'd like to take this time to thank our patrons for supporting our show and allowing us to continue to make episodes, maintain our gear, and create merch for all of our listeners, with special thanks to Erica Lamont, Chris Hawkins, Ryan Freshour, Dan Schubert, Jenny Dignan, and the ladies of the Dick Talk and Mimosas podcast. Thank you all so much for your support and patronage. Visit our shop at cancelformaintenance.com and grab some swag to show off both your support for us and your prowess as an aircraft technician. If you have ideas for the show or you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit our contact us section and send us a line. We will do what we can to get your ideas or yourself on the show. You can also follow us on social media, such as on Facebook at Cancel for Maintenance, Instagram at Canx, that's CANX for Maintenance Podcast, or on Twitter at CXMX Podcast. Check out some of our affiliates like Rockwell Time, where they make both rugged and classy watches to fit your lifestyle. Use the code CX4MX and save 10% off your purchase. Support us on Patreon. Our patrons get exclusive perks such as access to our Discord, discounts and early access to merch, special patron-only episodes, and so much more. Thank you again so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.